Welcome, everyone. I'll call this July 8th, 2025 meeting of council to order at 5:30 PM. This meeting will be held in a hybrid manner where members of council, staff, and the public can participate electronically. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be available on the township website. Notice is hereby provided that under the authority of the Municipal Act 2001 and in accordance with Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, that all information attained is considered part of the public record. All rules apply to the meeting as if everyone is attending in person, and if there is a problem with the technology impacting the proceedings of the meeting may be recessed. So at this time, I would ask everyone who can to rise for the playing of the national anthem. We acknowledge that we are being hosted on the ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee, Mississauga, and Omama-Winneni people. We acknowledge and welcome the presence of all Indigenous people, including the Métis, Inuit, and other First Nations from across this vast land, who also makes this place home. The lands we are on today are recognized in the Two-Row Wampum, Dish with One Spoon Treaty, Treaty 27, and the Crawford Purchase. So the first item up is the confirmation of the agenda. Do I have anyone who wishes to make that motion? Deputy Mayor?
I move that the agenda of the July 8th, 2025 meeting of council be confirmed as circulated.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Prodrick. All in favor? Motion is passed. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof in open session? Being none, I would now entertain a motion to go into closed session. If someone would like to present that motion. Councillor Willis.
I move that council now move into closed session to consider personal matters about an identifiable individual filling the Community Grant Committee vacancy pursuant to Section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Parks. All in favor? Motion is passed.
which rate is suitable for this specific and unique use. And based on the analysis, 45 is the peak, and we are providing 51 spaces, and we're hopeful that will take care of the ongoing parking issue along Park Crescent.
I'm not hearing where you've factored in the visitors and the time that they will be there. And long-term care is a little different than when somebody's staying in a facility for 10 days and is in a situation. So I'm not seeing where the visitors have been factored in.
When you say visitors, are you mean daily visitors or occupant visitors?
Visitors to the patients that are staying in the facility.
So because the AHF, in our opinion, is very similar to the existing use, and that the staff level is going to remain the same, we've looked at it because AHFs are kind of unique. We've looked at how the site has been operating. There is a contingent of TCUs right now, and our analysis and our best comparable was the site itself. But we'll continue to work with staff on perhaps looking at other expanded areas that have a more similar type AHF as we go forward. But this is the best analysis that we have available to us because of the uniqueness of this particular use.
Okay. Thank you. Other members of council? Seeing none, thank you for bringing the presentation for us and answering the questions. So now we will turn to the public. We have one person signed to speak, and Will Hume. Yep, if you want to just push the button so that your mic is on, and
Yeah, here we go. Oh,
like I'd mentioned, there's like 3 minutes, so.
yeah. Did the clock start now? I bet. Has it?
Typically, yes.
Okay.
She's tight,
They're
turning it on
just
there now.
Passing out flyers there.
Yeah.
I'll go quick. I timed this. Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Will Hume, and I'm a resident of 11 Park Crescent. I am here today to express my strong opposition to zoning bylaw amendment D14-012-2024, which proposes to rezone 24 Park Crescent, the site of the Windsor Retirement Residence, to allow new use, an alternative health facility. Let's be clear about what this means. Right now, this property is zoned for long-term retirement and nursing care. The proposed change would allow the facility to serve short-term medically referred individuals, effectively transforming it into a private transient medical center. That is not what our neighborhood was designed for, and it is not what we were promised when this development was approved. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to speak with the Vice President of Operations at the Sunray Group, and while I appreciated the chance to raise my concerns, I was struck by the gap between managing a property and living next to it. When I brought up the issue of traffic, I was told by him that it had already been solved and that they, meaning the company, might consider more parking restrictions if the bylaw was approved. And sure enough, last month, new parking restrictions were imposed on our side of the street where residents live, while on the other side, used primarily by staff and visitors for parking, remains untouched. This is not equitable planning. It is reactive accommodation for a growing business that our street was never meant to absorb. On top of that, the proposal seeks to reduce aisle widths, shrink parking spaces, and remove planting strip requirements, all to make room for more vehicles and higher turnover. These kinds of concessions might work in a hotel parking lot, but in a residential neighborhood, they create tighter, more dangerous spaces for drivers, pedestrians, and emergency vehicles alike. This concern is not mine alone. 23 residents of Park Crescent, the strong majority of our street, have signed a petition, which I have here, opposing the zoning amendment. We are not opposed to seniors housing or healthcare services. We are opposed to our neighborhood being redefined around the needs of a private operator rather than the needs of the people who live here. I'll be honest, I struggle to place full trust in this proposal because of who is behind it. The Sunray Group is primarily a hotel chain, not a healthcare provider. Their business model emphasizes high occupancy and rapid turnover, and their ongoing expansion into residential and healthcare adjacent spaces raises concerns about how far this model may spread and who will have oversight when it does. This isn't speculation. Sunray Group recently spent $91 million acquiring Toronto's luxury Bisha Hotel and invested $45 million in a Marriott-branded development in Wasaga Beach. These are high turnover, high traffic operations. And while there's nothing wrong with that in the right setting, it does raise real questions about what kind of business model they are quietly introducing into our residential neighborhood. And while bylaws can always be amended again in the future, changes like this open the door to high-density, commercial-style development that's hard to close once it begins. This isn't just about one operator or one building. It's about the kind of community Amherst View becomes and whether we let the needs of large-scale businesses reshape it bit by bit. I urge the council to reject zoning bylaw amendment D14-012-2024 and to stand with the residents who live here, not with distant corporate stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the only name we have on the list for this item. I'm going to, before you came, I gave an overview. I'll go to the in chambers for anyone who wishes to speak now, and then I'll go to the virtual audience for anyone who wishes to speak. So in chambers, if someone would like to come forward, you can sit at the chair the same as Will did, push the button so the red light comes on. Just provide your name and address, and you can share your information. There is a 3-minute time limit on this. We try to be understanding, but we also have a lot of business to do.
Okay, I appreciate being able to talk here tonight.
Could you just provide your name and address?
Okay, my name is Wayne Pryor and I'm a president of Amherst View. I've been resident of Amherst View probably since 1969. Anyways, I'm definitely pro-health care. The only thing is the situation with the parking on Park Street is horrendous. It's just horrible. Now what I'm thinking might be a good idea, or maybe it could be figured out somehow, is there are some building lots that are in the vicinity of the Windsor retirement home. Could it not be, say, for instance, one or two of those building lots be purchased off of whoever owns them and transferred into parking area? To me, that would make a lot of sense, because the thing is my daughter lives on Park Street, and during the construction and during the school being let in and out, I noticed that there was quite a lot of congestion. And for instance, one of the recycle trucks went down through, and I was 2 cars behind them. I had to follow him every stop. What happens if a fire truck had come down there? Because he had nowhere to go. So the thing is now I know they've stopped the one on the one side, on the, I guess, the east side of the street. No parking allowed there, which is not very cooperative with the people that live in that section. I mean, if you want to pull in quick or something, you get a delivery or something like that, it's no parking, no stopping or whatever. So, you know, it just, to me, it's ridiculous. There might be 2 lots in that Windsor vicinity. Buy the lots, pave them, done.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And well within your time. Thank you. Same thing, please just come forward, push the button so it lights up, and provide your name and address, please. Just push the button so this light, there we go.
Good evening, council members. My name is Steve Peterson. I'm at 3 Park Crescent. We moved into our home in 2015. I believe the construction at the Windsor Retirement Residence started the year following. As a resident on the same street of a school, we've been mindful not to park on the street during the hours of 9 and 3. as school buses can't fit down the road at the same time. In 2025, they introduced no parking on my side of the road at all hours, including summer holidays, meaning myself or my family members have no place to park. Have no place to park because the Windsor staff take up all the street parking. This multi-million-dollar company has the means to provide their staff with additional parking spaces. When the Windsor was first opened, it was a retirement residence, which led some, mostly myself, to believe it would be quiet. You know, there's not going to be parties next door at a retirement residence. Since then, it's caused parking problems for residents and traffic congestion for everyone who travels up and down the street. I've recently been informed now that they want to change in the retirement residence to a rehab center, which is not what the property was originally zoned for and the residents agreed to. Furthermore, with the parking, I feel like we can learn something from Kingston. I work downtown. A lot of streets are permit parking, so residents of that street have first chance to actually be able to park on that street. Or the other alternative would be no parking during school hours, which would be 9 and 3 during the weekdays. As someone on the street, I would be in favor of both of those options or either of those options. As a resident on the street, I'm disappointed in the township has made the decisions the township has made so far, putting large business ahead of its residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else within chambers that wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will go to the virtual audience. If there's anyone in the virtual audience who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raised hand feature and we can bring you into the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I see someone with their hand raised. I'm just going to let them in. And their first name is Alex.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting us speak here tonight. Appreciate the comments from the council members and our fellow residents as well. My name is Alex Robinson. I'm a resident at 32 Park Crescent. And like our fellow residents, we've seen quite a change from when we moved in 2018 to now. When we moved in, it was a quiet retirement home. That was quite nice and peaceful to live to. But we've seen quite a change since the transitional care unit has moved in. So I just have a question, Mr. Mayor, as well. So currently, I know it's zoned as R61 zone. That's for retirement residences and senior care complexes. Has this already passed, this amendment? Because, you know, it's our understanding this has been operating since, I think 2020 or 2021. So we're just a little confused here, just why this amendment is going now forward when it appears that it's been occurring over time. Do you have a comment on that, Mr. Mayor?
And at the end of the public questions and comments, staff will come back up and they can address that answer at that time. They're better
Okay.
qualified to answer it than I am at this point.
Okay.
So
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
we are taking in the information this evening for the
Okay.
the application that is before council. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you for your time. Appreciate that, sir.
Okay, thank you. So just stay online and staff will be coming forward once everyone is done speaking. If there's anyone else in the virtual audience who wishes to speak on this item, you'd please use the raised hand feature. We can bring you into the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised.
No one else with a hand raised? Okay, thank you. I just looked to staff. Do you wish to come forward? Any closing remarks, or if you would address that question, the last question that was presented?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. So in terms of the use, the proposed alternative health facility use is not permitted. Has come to staff's attention that the site is being used for that use, and that is why the zoning amendment has been submitted in order to rectify that. If it isn't passed, then the use would have to stop.
Thank you. Any other follow-up comments, or you answered the question? That was my main concern.
Yes, we've written down all the comments, and we'll be coming forward in the future with a recommendation report to council.
Thank you. And all the information received will be under consideration.
That's
Bringing
right.
that report forward.
That's right.
Thank you. I know I just want to make sure it's very clear. Council, any final questions for staff? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation before us. Would someone like to put a motion on the floor? Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that the report from Development Services Division dated July 8th, 2025, Republic Meeting Report, the Windsor 24 Park Crescent Zoning Bylaw Amendment D14-012-2024 be received, and that a recommendation be brought forward to council once comments from the township departments, agencies, and the public have been addressed.
So moved. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Willis, any comments from the mover?
No, not at this time.
Seconder? Other members? Call a question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Thank you. And we have another public meeting report, official plan amendment D09-001, 2025, and zoning bylaw amendment D14-003, 2025, additional residential units. And I will just mention to anyone that's in the audience, if you wish to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you're more than welcome. We understand if you had one item of interest and you wish to leave, do so quietly, please. We'll carry on with the business. Thank you. Welcome. You have information for us this evening?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can just provide a brief overview. This is a public meeting for a township initiated proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment to allow up to 4 residential units within the township in the urban serviced areas. This initiative was one of the township's action plan items under the Housing Accelerator Fund and was a requirement of CMHC in order to apply for funding. These applications are being proposed where there's a principal dwelling on the lot, which could be a single detached dwelling, semi, or a townhome. And it could contain 3 extra units within the main dwelling, or it could be in the form of 2 within the dwelling and then 1 as a detached unit, like a coach house. I should note that the province already has legislation that's in place that does override today our zoning bylaws and our zoning bylaw and our official plan to allow up to 3 units in residential areas that are on urban services. We're proposing zoning performance standards to further regulate the additional units, such as requiring an additional parking space for each unit, and provisions to ensure that the units are secondary to the main principal dwelling house. For the detached units, location, height, and setbacks are also being implemented as well. I should note that some of the proposed regulations that we're proposing will be difficult to meet in some areas of the townships, particularly in more newer, higher dense subdivisions, primarily due to parking constraints. As an example, for a lot in a new urban subdivision to accommodate 4 units, they would require 5 parking spaces, which is not feasible in majority of the newer subdivisions. Setbacks for detached units could also be limited on some of the smaller residential lots in new subdivision as well. We've received some public comments to that effect. We'll be reviewing them in greater detail in order to make appropriate changes before we bring a recommendation report back to council. But I can say that any potential reduced parking requirements requires a much larger review and analysis, which we're doing as part of the overall zoning bylaw review with a traffic and parking consultant. So at this time, we're not proposing any reductions to parking spaces for any second units. In addition to the urban area, we've also included updated official plan policies for one additional residential unit in outside the urban areas, so our rural areas and our hamlets, we already have some official plan policies to that effect, and then now we're implementing them through zoning as part of this exercise as well. So overall, this is our first draft. We'll be reviewing all feedback received, including comments we already have, and we'll come back to council with a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions at this time? Seeing none. Thank you. I'll go in chambers, and I have one name here, Frank Giroux. Did you want to speak to this, or did you just put a check mark that you were interested in it? Okay, thank you. I did notice there was one other name on the list here with no check marks. I just want to make sure that you didn't want to speak to one of the items. Gary Lees? Just observing. Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure that everyone that wished to speak had an opportunity. So I'll go in chambers. If there's anyone in chambers that wishes to speak to this item, please come forward and you can address council. Seeing none, I'll go to the virtual audience. If there's anyone in the virtual audience that wishes to address council on this item, please use the raise hand feature and you can be brought into the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I do see someone with their hand raised. I'm just going to let that person in. Their first name is Scott.
Scott, thank you.
Scott, if you can hear us, you're in the meeting room. You could turn on your video and start addressing council.
Good evening, Scott. Welcome.
Good evening. Just a quick question to clarify. Is this involve the lot on Church Street in Bath? Is this part of this?
No.
No? Okay.
This is for additional units within a existing lot. And the one on Church Street is for housing. This is for existing lots, the one we're on right now.
Okay, sorry, my mistake.
Okay,
So-
thanks. If there's anyone else in the virtual audience that wishes to speak this evening, please use the raised hand feature and we can bring you into the meeting. Seeing none. We have the report before us, council. Councillor Budrick.
Recommend that the report from the Development Services Division dated July 8th, 2025 RE public meeting regarding the official plan amendment D09-001-2025 and zoning bylaw amendment D14-003-2025, additional residential units be received, and that the recommendation be brought forward to council once comments from the township departments, agencies, and public have been addressed.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Willis. Any comments from the mover?
Just one, I really appreciate Ms. Furness mentioning about the spaces in for parking and newer lots compared to older lots. So that's glad we're getting ahead of that. That's fantastic.
You. Seconder. Other members of council? Call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. And on to our final public meeting, Affordable Housing and Purpose-Built Housing Community Improvement Plan. Public meeting is being held in accordance with the provisions of Section 28 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, to consider an affordable and purpose-built rental community improvement plan. The Community Improvement Plan, CIP, is a planning and economic development tool that sets out a framework to assist in community revitalization and assist to achieve economic, community planning, and urban development goals. The township's official plan identifies the opportunity to provide affordable housing as a criteria for improvement, revitalization, and redevelopment. The proposed affordable and purpose-built rental housing CIP will create financial incentives for the redevelopment, construction, and reconstruction of lands and buildings to support the focus of this CIP, to attract the development of affordable and purpose-built rental housing within the township. So we have staff here preparing to provide us with some information. When it's ready, please feel free to proceed.
My name is Dave Rowade. I'm a Housing Accelerator Fund Coordinator for Loyalist Township, and I'm here to present the draft Affordable Purpose-Built Rental Community Improvement Plan. So over the next several minutes, I'll briefly touch on what a Community Improvement Plan, or CIP, is, address why the township is creating the CIP, as well as give an update on stakeholder feedback we've received since staff last came to this committee on April 8th. And then we'll get into what the proposed incentives are and who can access them. And I'll wrap up with next steps before the question period commences. So a CIP tool, or a CIP is a tool provided under the Planning Act that enables municipalities to provide support for community growth and revitalization. It can include financial incentives such as grants and rebates. And Loyalist has previously done this in development of industrial land and revitalization of Bath. Why is the township creating this? These are the 3 points I'll address over the next 3 or 4 slides. Is basically there's a need for affordable and rental housing in the township. It's part of the township strategic plan, and there was some recent federal funding awarded to the township. So addressing each one of those points, overall, we're seeing a growing disconnect between the existing housing that's being built within the township and the expected growth of new households in the region over the next few years. That's addressing that first point where we're seeing a lot of 3-bedroom homes, but not a lot of new 1 or 2-bedroom units, particularly rental units. And there's a big income disparity between homeowners and people renting within the township. Renter householding income is significantly less than the total of the township and amongst homeowners. And you can see the gap is pretty significant on the second bullet. So clearly more affordable rental housing options are needed within the township. Affordable housing standard that's mentioned in the final bullet there is referring to housing that costs less than 30% of a household's gross income. And if we include housing that is overcrowded or in need of repair, this number increases to almost 1,600 people, or around 23% of households within the township. So all that is to say that obviously went into developing the current strategic plan for the term of council here. And that's why it's part of the balanced growth objective to plan for more affordable and attainable housing. Finally, on the funding issue as to why this is being developed, about 6 months ago, I think it was made public that there was a funding award from the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund, or HAF program. The objectives are up there, and you can see address some of the need that I just spoke to. The township is using a portion of the HAF support to increase the local supply of rental housing and address affordability needs. The CIP is one of 8 initiatives. There's also a zoning bylaw comprehensive review, design guidelines to improve clarity for engineering requirements, a sale of surplus land for housing and housing supportive uses, and a land donation potentially to the county for purpose of constructing affordable housing. Those are a few of the examples. Moving on to some of the stakeholder feedback received over the last few months. So we held a developers forum, I believe, in this room on May 1st. It was well attended, and we outlined all 8 of the township's HAP initiatives, including the CIP, to get input on their advancement. We also had a survey up on the Township Engage page for the public and developers and builders for 2 weeks. This was focused specifically on the CIP and the potential incentives that are being considered. And then we conducted some informal discussions with staff and municipalities that have some experience with implementation of these types of CIPs to learn some of the best practices and lessons learned. All that to say is that this feedback shaped the development of the CIP in 3 main ways: the types and value of incentives, the eligibility criteria, and some of the administration considerations. So let's dive into the meat of the presentation. What are the incentives? So we have a purpose-built rental grant, or PBR, additional residential unit grant, and affordable rental incentive. And before I give a little more detail of each one, just for definitions, purpose-built rentals are defined as residential buildings specifically constructed to be rented out rather than sold as individual units. So these buildings are designed to provide long-term rental accommodations and typically include apartment complexes and multi-unit dwellings. Purpose-built rentals are intended to meet the needs of renters rather than homeowners. Additional residential units, I have a definition that'll come up in a few minutes. It's related to the public meeting you just had before this. So we'll get into that in a second. And the affordable rental incentive, the term affordable, the definition there is based on the County of Lennox and Addington's official plan, where a rental housing unit is considered affordable if it's the least expensive of a unit which the rent does not exceed 30% of gross annual household income, or the unit for which the rent is at or below the average mark rent of a unit in the regional market area. And I'll provide figures in a few minutes that were given to us by the county for this purpose. So getting into the PBR grant, the purpose-built rental. So as you can see, we've set a maximum dollar figure there that's equal to more than half of the cost of various planning application fees. This is directly reflective of some of the feedback we heard from developers, as some of these fees are of concern to them. So this is a bit of a cost share approach, if you will. I've included some information up there about eligible developments and ineligible developments. I will point out this is meant to be for larger developments at minimum 4 residential units. So think of low-rise apartment buildings. The applicable geographic area for this incentive is the portion of the township that is serviced by municipal water and wastewater infrastructure within the urban areas of Amherst, Bath, and Odessa. And for clarity on that, we've included maps in the appendix of the draft CIP. The next grant is the additional residential units. So these can be internal, attached, or an accessory building on the same property as a principal residence. We've got a few different types of grants, which I'll get into in a moment. They're all supposed to help with some of the upfront costs of developing this type of unit in a new or existing home. The applicable geographic area for this incentive is the entire township, but obviously subject to still meeting all permitting, planning, and zoning requirements, and consideration of servicing capacity of both available municipal infrastructure in the urban area and private systems in the rural area. I will point out that the zoning bylaw amendments are required to follow for additional residential units outside of the areas serviced by municipal water and sewer services, and are currently under review by my colleague who is just up here from Development Services. So the range here for the grant is from $5,000 to $25,000, and the $5,000 on the lower end is for the rough end for the electrical, mechanical, and water servicing to be included in a new home to allow for the eventual owner to consider an ARU if they so wish. Whereas in the $10,000 to $25,000 range, that's for an existing individual homeowner. And again, it could be inside or attached to an existing home. If it's an accessory building or structure, that is at the $20,000 level of a grant, and additional up to $5,000 for units that require servicing upgrades based on expected increased water consumption and wastewater needs. And last but not least, the affordable rental incentive is stackable with the previous two grants for an additional up to $10,000 per unit. The requirements are they have to be at 100% or less of the average market rent, and it cannot exceed 30% of the tenant's gross annual household income. The owners of the property also must commit to maintaining this new rental unit as affordable for 15 years. And I'll just show those figures. These are updated annually. So using last year's data, this was what it would be for bachelor 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. And then these are the income thresholds that are used by social services in Lennox and Addington County for their related programs, again, for the different units. So these would be updated and provided on the township's website and other means. So moving on to who can access these incentives. As you can see, the affordable rental incentive is accessible to all those that are listed along the top. So there could be for-profit developers, not-for-profit, co-op housing providers. Residents can also participate in the additional residential unit grant, whereas in the for-profit developer, the ARU grant is only that rough-in. And then the purpose-built rental grants are only available for those first two developers and housing providers, again, because these are larger developments not suitable for an individual residential lot. So a few bullets on eligibility. I think the first one's obvious, that there's a target type of housing we're trying to develop, and it has to be within the township boundaries. The second bullet, though, is an understatement. This would be the absolute latest. Applications should be coming in. We're going to encourage applicants to approach the township as early in the process as possible to discuss the project, as there may be also other planning application requirements for their project. Regardless of what grants or incentives they could be eligible for, they will not exceed the cost of the construction either for the unit or for the additional servicing required. And that fourth bullet, the applicant must be in good standings, referring to no property tax arrears, no outstanding utility bills, no bylaw contraventions or ongoing litigation with the township. And then, just like any other development, projects must conform to local bylaws, provincial codes, and any other applicable legislation. So we're in the process of drafting agreements that eligible and approved applicants will be required to enter into the township. That'll stipulate all the applicable requirements of the particular CIP incentive program they seek, and the agreement will be registered on title of the property in accordance with the Planning Act. So final slide in terms of next steps. So we will make any required revisions from this mandatory public meeting and the other stakeholder consultations that are being wrapped up with the province, utilities, and other agencies such as the county. We'll come back next month to present to this committee the budget and implementation plan and seek your approval for the CIP. Following that, we'll finish preparing all application forms, agreements, and guides and checklists, anything to do with the communication plan to prepare for a launch early fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions at this time? Councillor Willis.
Thank you, through your worship. Thank you for your presentation. I'm excited about this program. You mentioned that that a resident could apply for an additional residential unit grant. If they don't apply for the affordable rental incentive, then they can rent that unit for whatever they want.
Sorry, can you please confirm, are you asking about the term?
No,
Or
so
for
I'm
the
asking
amount of
about,
rent? Oh, okay.
a person gets a grant to put an apartment in their basement, but they don't apply for the affordable rental incentive, which ties them to 15 years of affordable rent. So they could rent that apartment for whatever they want. They could rent it as a short-term rental.
Yes.
They could do whatever they want with it. Is that consistent with how Kingston has done their ARU program? Because I understood,
Short-term rentals, no. They're the affordable rental initiative, if it is at the additional grant, that's where the 10-year and the average market rent kicks in.
so Kingston has the 2 levels of grants as well?
They have several.
Yeah.
They actually have even more levels than we do.
Okay. And one other question, the paying for the grants that help with new builds with the rough-ins for secondary units in, let's call it the basement, would we also then be requiring that the windows are the size that they would need to be if it was developed as an apartment, or that there's some form of egress, like just to roughen a bathroom doesn't necessarily mean that that basement space is going to be appropriate for future development? So would we be asking that they're meeting those building code things as well?
That is a fabulous question, and we will work with our partners in building and planning to make sure that all of those considerations are included. Yeah, great point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? Being none, thank you very much for the presentation. I'll just proceed to the rest of the public meeting. So if there's anyone in chambers that wishes to speak to this item, please come forward and you can have a seat and address council. Okay, if you could just come up to the chair, otherwise no one can hear you in the virtual audience. Please just provide your name and then you can ask the question.
Thank you. I think it's on.
Yes, it is.
Okay. My name's Lori McCartney. And with the CIP, my question is, with the new homes, particularly in Loyalist community, there is under contract bylaws or rules that one needs to follow, 52 pages worth. And my question is that if you get funding to add, I'm going to use your example, the apartment in the basement, you're actually not following the bylaws or the agreement that you have with Caitlin. Does one supersede the other? That's my question.
So this is strictly related to Caitlin then?
Yeah, well, I'm just
Mentioned
talking
it?
about that particular community, but I don't know the others.
Okay. Then what we'll do is, staff are working on that question. If there's anything else you wish to provide, feel free to do it. Otherwise, I'll go through the rest of the process and then staff will come up and address that question at
Of
that
course.
time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want this off?
It's fine that way. If there's anyone else in chambers that wishes to come and present to council, please come forward. Seeing none, we will go to the virtual audience. If there's anyone in the virtual audience that wishes to speak to council, please use the raised hand feature and we can bring you into the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, Scott is back to ask a question.
Okay. Welcome, Scott.
I'm hoping I've got the right segment of the meeting here. I just
Go
have a
ahead with the
couple of
question.
questions because I believe this does apply to some property on Church Street in Loyalist. My question is the property being considered possibly for development for rent geared income or whatever these grants are, providing rental property is my understanding is that piece of property was gifted by the developer. And I wonder if there's a summary of the gift restrictions available as to what the intent, because I believe it was meant to be parkland. And I know it can be changed through a revision to the zoning, but I'm just curious what the intent for that property was. And my second question, I know you can't give me an answer, but is there going to be, if this property is considered a traffic study done? Because I believe it shows access onto Abidon Drive. And with 72 units being proposed, I wonder the impact on the traffic on that roadway, and whether it would be considered, if it does go through, would the entrance be looked at coming off of County Road 7 versus coming through the subdivision? Anyways, those are my two questions. I don't know whether anyone can answer them, but I just wanted to get them on record.
Okay, thank you, Scott, and staff have taken note of those. If there are answers, we'll come back. Otherwise, it will be part of the feedback we'll work on. So I'll just go back to the virtual audience. If there's anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to council, please use the raised hand feature and we will bring you into the meeting. No one? Thank you. So we will loop back to staff. I think that one part we may have to. Please proceed with any information you have. I'm not going to guess.
Thank you, Your Worship. With respect to the first question from the member of the public in the audience, we will review that and can provide some information with respect to the covenants that are registered on the specific Caitlin properties. So we will do that. With respect to the second question from the member of the public attending virtually, while the surplus land discussion that the resident was referencing is part of the Housing Accelerator Fund Action Plan, it's not specifically related to the CIP in terms of the zoning requirements and the plans for access and all of those sorts of things. So at this point, all that has happened is that council has declared that land surplus, and any other work is still yet to be determined in that regard. So there will be additional information coming to council via public meeting and staff reports and those sorts of things for anything else that would happen with that property.
And all of those planning requirements would be brought in at that time, right?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that was all the questions. Council, we have the report with the recommendation. Would someone like to put a motion on? Councillor Proctor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that the report from the Corporate Services Strategy Innovation Department dated July 8th, 2025, read statutory public meeting, affordable and purpose-built housing community improvement plan, CIP, and the draft CIP attachment A be received, and that following the public meeting, staff be directed to finalize the CIP for council's consideration at their next scheduled meeting, including feedback received from external stakeholders, consultations.
So moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Parks. Mover, any comments?
As I said, probably the day this came forward, it's an exciting opportunity and I hope we can take our time and get it right.
You, seconder, other members of council? I would just like to first thank the public that have come forward, provided questions or comments, both this evening and that have been sent in as well. The feedback certainly helps us tailor it to Loyalist. And I'd also like to thank staff for the amount of work that has been done. I believe that's the first presentation you've made to council, Mr. Rowood. I see you working away across the aisle from me every day, but when I'm in the office and coming to fruition, the presentation this evening. So a lot of work has been done to get it to this stage. Thank you. With that, I will call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. That brings us to open forum. 15 minutes of the meeting has been set aside for open forum. Any individual may address council regarding an item on the agenda, excluding matters under the statutory public meeting section on the same agenda. Each person has 3 minutes to speak. Anyone wishing to speak can register in advance, which we did not have any, or I will call into the chambers for anyone who wishes to speak, and then virtually I will ask them to use the raised hand feature. So with that, is there anyone in chambers that wish to speak this evening under open forum? Being none, go to the virtual audience. If there's anyone in the virtual audience who wishes to speak this evening under open forum, please use the raised hand feature and we can bring you into the meeting. None? Seeing none, that concludes that portion. Next is items for consideration, 2025 Community Tree Initiative Pilot Program Summary and Next Steps. Welcome. Do you have some additional information to share this evening?
No, Your Worship, just here for questions.
Just to answer questions? Okay. So, council, we have the report before us with a recommendation with a blank to be filled in. Before we start, because there is a blank here, are there any questions just for clarification for staff before we take a motion? Being none, I would entertain a motion. Deputy Mayor.
Well, we'll see where it goes. I move that the report from the Engineering and Environment Division dated July 8th, 2025, re 2025 Community Tree Initiative Pilot Program Summary and Next Steps be received, and the council adopts option number 2.
So moved. Do we have a second? Councilor Proctor. Mover, you wish to speak to it?
I can just speak to my particular preference for that option. I mean, the program is great. I do think it should be expanded. I think it conforms to our strategic plan. That's obvious, particularly with respect to our climate action plan. And I think we should find the means to continue to fund it through our usual budget process, which we do for all of our other items that come under our strategic plan.
You? Seconder?
I would echo that, and just by putting it through the budget process, we sort of have a better opportunity to look at our needs and what we can afford at that time.
You? Do you mind just reading out what option 2 is? I just realized there's people in chambers and there are going to be people in virtual audience that may not have the agenda open in front of them. Right.
Option number 2 reads, direct staff to continue with the program with consideration for expansion and bring back a funding proposal through the 2026 operating budget.
Thank you. That just makes it very clear. Any other council members who wish to speak to this? Being none, I'll call the question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Through the mayor, just
Your
that
mic isn't on. Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to support the motion. I would actually like to see option 4. I think it's the type of thing that should be supported by the community grants policy, and I would like to see what staff would come back with as an option there. So I would like to see option 4.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council this evening? Being none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Amendment to Site Plan Control Bylaw 2015-048. Welcome back. Do you have any additional information this evening or just here to answer questions?
Through the mayor, just here to answer questions.
Council, we do have the report with the recommendation before us. Someone like to put a motion on the floor? Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Worship. I would make sure I'm on the right one here. 11-2, that's what I thought. That the report from the Development Services Division dated July 8th, re-amendment to Site Control Bylaw 2015-48 be received, and that council approve bylaw 2025-046, a bylaw to amend the site plan control bylaw 2015-48.
So moved. Seconded by Counselor Willis. Comments from the mover?
No, sir.
Seconder? Other members? Call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Stopping up, closing, and transferring portion of North Street road allowance. And just got any additional information?
Through you, the mayor, we are just here for questions. Thank you.
Again, we have the report with the recommendation. Would council member like to put a motion on the floor? Councilor Broderick?
No, can be repetitive here. That the report from the Development Services Division dated July 8th, 2025, stopping up, closing, and transferring a portion of the North Street Road allowance be received. That council declare surplus to municipal need and dispose a portion of land described as firstly, North Street Plan 91. Secondly, Part Lot 277 Plan 91 as in LA 115482, more particularly shown as Part 2 on Plan 29R 11508, that lands being transferred be merged with the Limestone District School Board's land, that bylaw 2025-45 being a bylaw to close, stop up, and sell a portion of North Street in Odessa, being Part 2 on Plan 29R 11508 be enacted and passed, and that council delegates the authority to the mayor and the chief CAO to execute all necessary documents to authorize the land transfer.
So move. Do we have a seconder? Councilor Willis. Mover, any comments?
The only comment I would say, it's just a good thing to sort of tie up that area, which has been sort of a traffic conundrum, I guess, and gives the school board an opportunity to do some things that are going to benefit the community.
Thank you. Seconder? Other members? Call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Oops, almost skipped one. Species of Risk Habit Compensation Report or Project Budget Request. Welcome. Standard question. Do you have anything additional to add or just here to answer questions?
Just to answer question, your worship.
Thank you. Council, we do have the report and recommendation again. Would someone like to put a motion on the floor? Councilor Boudreau.
Recommendation that the report from Economic Growth and Community Development Services Department dated July 8th, 2025, RE Species at Risk Habitat Compensation Project budget request be received, and that two, council approve a budget of $1.3 million funded through a third-party contribution for the species at risk compensation work.
So moved. Seconded by Councilor Parks. Comments from the mover? Seconder? Other members? Call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Thank you. Loyalist Township Street Intersection Review. Switching seats. Welcome this evening. Is there anything additional to add to this report?
Nothing further, just here for questions.
Thank you. Council? Would someone like to put a motion on the floor? Deputy Mayor Tanner.
I move that the report from the Public Works Division dated July 8th, 2025, Loyalist Township Street Intersection Review be received, that council directs staff to consult with MTO for approval to implement an all-way stop at the intersection of Sherwood Drive and Manitou Crescent. 3, that council directs staff to proceed with the recommendations suggested in the GHD group report to include upgrades to signage, pavement markings, street signage, and remedial landscaping to Maple Road / Old Wilton Road intersection and Front Road / Emerald 40-foot intersection. 4, that if approval from MTO is received, council directs staff to proceed with recommendations suggested in the GHD group and implement the all-way stop and modified lane configurations at Manitou Crescent / Sherwood Avenue. 5, that council directs staff to reassess long-term infrastructure improvements during future capital planning and development review processes. And 6, that all costs are to be funded within the Public Works 2025 operations budgets as approved.
So moved. Seconded by Councilor Willis. Mover, any comments? Seconder? Any comments?
One comment.
Yep.
Through the chair, thanks to an eagle-eyed member of the public, it was noticed that in the consultant's report that the unposted speed limit in Emerald is 50 kilometers an hour. And it's a relic of it being historically a hamlet. And we're really appreciative of the work that staff are doing to address that intersection that is dangerous. And just wondering if part of the signage could be actually posting that 50 kilometer speed limit in that area of Emerald where the intersection is.
Through you, your worship, yes, that would, we can absolutely do that.
Thank you. That was the only comment. Seconder, other members of council? Seeing none, just thank you for the very thorough review and study that was done on this project. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. And now we would take a motion that council now resolve into committee of the whole. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor, so moved, seconded by Councillor Pradrick. All in favor? Motion is passed.
Right, I call this committee of the whole to order at 7:38. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest, the general nature thereof? Seeing none, items for consideration. 13.3.1, 2026 municipal elections, selection of a voting method, and I'll turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have a brief presentation to provide to the committee.
Good evening, everyone. So we do just have a brief presentation. So just starting off with some information about the past municipal election in 2022. So in 2022, Loyalist Township offered electors both internet and telephone voting and traditional ballots. And internet and telephone voting was made available throughout the advanced voting period between October 17th at 10 a.m. until October 22nd at 8 p.m. The traditional paper ballots were available on voting day and were counted using tabulators. There were 13,705 eligible voters in the township, and the voter turnout was calculated at 29% of eligible voters. So just some information about the voting methods that are available. So first there's the traditional paper ballots, there's internet voting, telephone voting, and vote by mail. You'll see here on the screen is just a screenshot of what an information letter would look like sent out to eligible electors so that they're aware of the voting period. If there's internet voting, there'll be a special PIN included for them. So it's just a sample of what that would look like. So first off, just going into some more detail about the methods of voting. So we do have paper ballots, which are considered the traditional ballots. So since 2010, the township has used tabulators to calculate and count the votes. So with this voting method, electors receive their voting information letter, which outlines their voting location and time. And when the elector arrives at their designated voting location, they will receive a paper ballot, which lists the candidates, and the elector will mark their choice. And once the election official feeds the ballot into the tabulator, and then the tabulator is able to check for any errors, and it will reject the ballot if there's any errors on it that need to be edited or updated from that specific elector. So here you can just see examples of what the tabulators look like. And we can note that the way it works is that there is a digital secure memory device or like a USB stick inside the tabulator that will be retrieved after the election period. And it's able to, there's a device to securely read that information. However, at the bottom of the tabulator, the paper ballots are collected. So should there need to be like a recount or anything, those physical copies are available. Next is internet voting. So internet voting has been offered in Loyalist Township since 2014. And with this voting method, electors receive their voting information letter and it outlines how they can access the voting system. So electors will log into a secure voting portal using their provided credentials to access the digital ballot, which mirrors a paper ballot. The elector then clicks their option and will have the ability to review the selection of candidate before the vote is officially cast. The vote will then be encrypted to protect the privacy of that elector, and all the information is stored in a secure digital database. In some cases, voters could have the option to verify their vote was received and counted correctly, and this is done with a unique tracking code. With this method, election results can be provided immediately after the voting period closes. And we do just have a quick little video, which I will share. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
And before we share the video, I just want to add that
The following is an automated demo.
This video was created by our vendor from 2022. It doesn't mirror what happened or what was available in 2022, but it shows very similar likeness to what the electors would have seen.
Demonstration of IntelliVote's e-voting system that provides an example of an online e-voting session. To begin, the elector will refer to their voter instruction letter received in the mail for the IntelliVote e-voting website address to access the online vote. Upon entering the site, the voter is presented with the Human Interface Challenge, also known as a CAPTCHA challenge. This is designed to eliminate automated applications from accessing the voting system. The Human Interface Challenge requires a voter to recognize the characters in the image and enter the characters into the box provided below. Next, the voter will enter their unique personal identification number found in their voter instruction letter. Upon validation, the voter is welcome to the election. This welcome message advises the voter what ballots they are eligible for and what ballots, if any, have been won by acclamation. The voter is now ready to begin voting. The first ballot is for mayor and has 4 candidates running. Voting instructions are displayed below the ballot title to let the voter know how many candidates may be selected. Following the instructions, the voter simply clicks the box next to the candidate of their choice, marking an X in the box, and clicks Submit. Once the voter has submitted their selection, they're provided with the opportunity to either confirm their selection by clicking Vote Now, or return to the ballot to change their selection. In this example, the voter clicks Vote Now. A confirmation message is presented advising that the selection has been recorded. This confirmation is analogous to the voter dropping a ballot into the ballot box. At this point, the vote is final and cannot be changed. The voter then clicks Continue to move on to the council ballot. In some municipal structures, several wards or districts make up the municipality, categorizing each elector into the respective ward or district based on where they reside. A PIN classification is created in the IntelliVote system based on the municipal structure, ensuring each elector receives the ballots correspondent to their electoral regions. In this example, the voter is presented with a councillor ballot specific to their district. The voter makes their selection by choosing the candidate of their choice, marking an X in the box as shown. In this example, the voter confirms their choice by clicking Vote Now and submitting their ballot. Each ballot is confirmed individually and is encrypted and securely transmitted to the e-voting application. The last ballot is for the school board election. 2 candidates are running. The voter chooses a candidate and, as with previous ballots, submits and confirms their choice. When all ballots have been successfully voted in the e-voting application, the voter is provided with a summary of the voted ballots. The ballot summary is available to the voter throughout the e-voting period. And that concludes the demonstration of an example online e-voting session.
All right, and now moving on to telephone voting as a method. So telephone voting has also been offered by Loyalist Township since 2014. And in this case, with this voting method, electors will receive their voting information and a letter which outlines the phone number they need to access for that voting system. Electors then dial into a secure voting portal and use those provided credentials. So, and then once authenticated, the system reads out the ballot using a text-to-speech or pre-recorded audio. Voters respond by pressing numbers on their keypad to select their choices. Before the submission is final, the system provides an audio review to confirm the elector's selection. The vote is then encrypted to protect privacy and is also transmitted to a secure server. With this method, election results can also be provided immediately after the voting period closes. And lastly, there is the voting method of a mail-in ballot, so vote by mail. In some cases, electors have to request a mail-in ballot, and in other cases, the ballot is automatically mailed to all eligible electors. And in this case, voters receive a paper ballot along with instructions, a secrecy envelope, and a return envelope. Voters mark their choices on the ballot, and then once the ballot has been completed, it is placed in the secrecy envelope, which is then replaced in the return envelope. So before this is returned by the elector, they must sign the envelope for identity verification processes. And then once the election officials receive this envelope, they will verify that the signature matches the elector registration records. And then once that is verified, the ballot is separated from that envelope to ensure that privacy is maintained. And then ballots will then be counted, and electors can track their ballots online typically to confirm that their ballot was received and counted. And in this case, there is a strict deadline for mail-in ballots to be received back to ensure that everything is received by the deadline. And then just looking at the other lower tier municipalities within Lennox and Addington County and their process for looking into options for the 2026 municipal election. So Stone Mills Township selected a hybrid model for their 2026 election. So this will include electronic and paper voting for their electors. The town of Greater Napanee is currently undertaking a public survey to collect preferred voting method preferences from their eligible electors. And then they will inform their council and make a recommendation for decision. And then lastly, Addington Highlands will be conducting via internet and telephone voting only. And we're here to take any questions.
My thanks to staff. Councillor Willis.
I need your help with the math. Because the last election, 2022, cost us $65,000 and we did hybrid telephone, internet, and paper. But your report suggests that we're grossly underfunded in the election reserve if we use that same process again. And if I'm adding it up, you're saying that we've got $50,000 in the reserve, but if we choose the method that would be the hybrid one, that could cost $61,000. So we're jumping from 65,000 to 111,000. What's different?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councilor Willis's question. So this estimate was generated based on several quotes I received from the vendors that I have contact with. So I reached out to about 5 vendors, asked them whether or not they provide internet and telephone voting, whether they complement that service with paper ballots, the cost for those services, and what is the cost for the voter notification letters. And this is the average of those informal quotations that I received. So the majority of the cost or the budget, the proposed budget, does come from the contracted services. So this is the internet voting, paper ballot, if that's chosen, our voter management tool, our voter information cards, which is the most, I guess, popular way to provide elector information directly to electors. That is about 30 cents per elector, plus the cost of postage, sending that mail to each elector. So that's where majority of the cost comes from.
If I may. I'm still not seeing the bridge, because if we did exactly what we did in 2022, we're going from $65,000 to 111, changing nothing. What is different?
There's also something that I forgot to mention, the tabulators, the ones that were purchased by the township in 2010 are no longer in use. And the service provider has told us that the 2022 election was the last time those tabulators could be used. So for this election, if we were to go with paper ballots, the township would either have to buy tabulators, which is not what I'm recommending, or rent tabulators from Elections Ontario.
Does the 111,000, is that what it would cost to buy them, like a capital expense?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, it's not the entirety is not the cost of the tabulators. So tabulators go up to $1,200 per tabulator. So if there were 3 voting locations for each ward. We would have to rent 3 different tabulators, plus another one for the ballots that we receive from retirement homes and long-term care homes. So potentially 4. The other costs, the other increases to the cost comes from communication. So we've heard from the 2022 election that communication is a great way for for electors to receive information. So going out there into the public, having signs, having little postcards, those all help communicate the information to them. I've also anticipated up to 5 voting locations. And the reason it's up to 5 voting locations is because there is potentially, if the ward boundary review changes are in effect for the 2026 election, then I intend to have 5 voting locations, 1 per each ward. And so they need to be staffed. I have also increased the number of voting days at physical locations. So in 2022, there was only 1 day of in-person voting available, and that was voting day. And in the proposed budget, I have asked for cost to accommodate up to 3 full days of voting. So electors have multiple chances to go to a voting location to cast their ballot or make changes to the voters list or get help to vote. And then the other costs are related to the voting locations. Wherever there, we do have quite a bit of supply from the 2022 election. So wherever we can use those supplies, we will definitely use it. But if we need more devices like laptops or iPads or printers, then the budget has been increased for that purpose. And then the legal cost has just been increased slightly, as well as the compliance audit committee costs as well.
Other questions from the committee? Councilor Broderick.
I'm going to make an assumption, don't take this the wrong way, all these vendors are Canadian.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, they're not. But once the voting method is approved, we would do an RFP, competitive, and then we would make sure that we follow the procurement bylaw to select a vendor.
Okay, and if I may continue, Mr. Chair. And again, I'm just talking out loud here. Electronic and voting, given the numbers from the last election, is telephone voting even worth it? 241 votes, I think. And I'm just thinking of cost. Is there a way to split that it's only electronic? As part of your RFP, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Broderick, the cost of telephone voting is usually none or very low if the vendor provides internet voting at the same time. So I would not recommend removing that option because it really doesn't cost the township that much more.
Okay, fair enough. And just again, my concerns, and I think there's an option here that address these are again, given the time of the election, November, so you're looking at snowbirds, kids away, at university, hopefully they're voting. People who are homebound. This will allow for adaptive technology for people who use it at home, I assume. Okay. And I like the ideas of the help center. And so basically, in my simple little way of thinking is people are still voting almost like paper, but they're coming in to vote on a computer in a sense. And again, are we going to be reaching out to the seniors' homes taking like a little mini polling or whatever there.
Absolutely. To Councillor Project's questions and comments, voting, so instead of voting locations, they would be referred to as voter help centers or something like that. So not to give the idea that you have to go to a voting location to vote. These voter help centers would be would have devices available where people can vote. They would have election officials making changes to the voters list. And what electors could do is they could walk in, get their voter notification card if they weren't already on the voters list, or if they lost it, and then they can just walk away, or they could use some of the devices that are available. And then to your question or comment about retirement homes, yes, that is the plan to ensure that retirement homes and long-term care facilities that meet the legislation are added as a voting location, and the intention is to have multiple teams go out to those voting locations to give the residents ample time to cast their ballot. If it's paper, then we would bring the ballots with us. If it's internet and telephone only, then we would bring devices for the residents to use.
Councillor Ennis.
For the chair, like to get voter participation higher than 29%. So whatever we can do, I'd be in favor of that. That's a harder question to answer though. But I do think things like more polling stations, open for more days, more voting days, more communication, those types of things probably would help get the rate up. And, you know, for me, if it was a decision of if you don't have the paper on site, but you have internet on site, that saves money, and that money can be used for some of those other things like more days, more communication, more sites. I'd be more inclined to lean that way.
Okay, Councillor Broderick.
I'd be prepared to make a recommendation. I didn't want to drag this out.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Any more questions for that? Go ahead, Councillor Willis, one more.
Just, I'm very, I had a lot of conversations about this over the weekend, and I heard very clearly that people are not prepared to walk away from paper ballots, that they would be very uncomfortable with that. And most of those people were seniors, and I would hate to alienate people who do vote. Are you suggesting that we would have polling stations open, that a person can walk through the door on election day, and instead of filling out a paper ballot, they can vote at the polling station, but they have to do it on a computer? And what if they're confused? What if they can't figure that out? Is someone coming into their private space while they're voting?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councilor Willis's question, yes. So the voting locations would be set up similar to what you see for paper ballots. An elector would walk in, they have their voter notification card with them. They go to behind the screen, and then they would see a tabulator, sorry, not a tabulator, a tablet or an iPad or a laptop instead of a paper ballot. And if they needed help, similar to paper ballots, they would sign an affidavit asking an election official to assist, and the election official will get them to sign that piece of paper and then go behind the screen and help them vote. But that's only if they need help voting. If they just need help getting through the credentials page, as you saw the first stage where you put in all the PIN and then the information, then an election official would be able to help up to that point. And then when the elector sees the ballot, the election official will walk away or turn their back, and then the elector will complete the ballot on their own behind the screen.
Counselor Parks.
Through the chair to staff, with the survey, and I'm sorry, I can't find it in the report at this point, the survey that's done through Brock University. Is that a requirement under the act, or is that just something there's an $11,000 cost?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Parks's question, no, that is not a required cost. And that was just added as it was done in 2022. So I just assumed that you would want to do it one more time.
Counselor Innes.
Just another follow-up comment that clearly many residents like to still go to polling stations. Like it's 1,000 plus. That's quite a high number. So polling stations and the number of them and then how long they're open is very important.
Okay, Counselor Broderick, if you want a motion, I'll entertain it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would recommend that the report from the Clerk's Division dated July 8th, 2025, read 2026 municipal election, selection of a voting method be received, and that the committee select option 1, that staff be directed to bring forward a bylaw to authorize the selected voting methods to a future council meeting, and that staff be directed to add the budget amount to the 2026 operating and capital budget for consideration.
So moved. Is there a seconder? Counselor Innes. Mover, comment.
This will come as no surprise to anybody here, but I'm old school too. And I appreciate the paper thing, but I think it's time to move ahead. The clerk has sort of answered most of my questions. And I think is how do we get, as Councillor Innes said, from 29% to something better? And, I think the big thing that I think from my point of view that I'm learning as a counselor is the communication piece, however you get it out there. And there's still going to be that feeling of community if people choose to go and vote because they don't have the technology or whatever at that help center or whatever you want to, however you want to word it. And I know there's going to be maybe maybe use the word backlash, but I guess, progress has a price, I guess. And if that's me not getting elected, if I ran again, that's the price I pay.
Counselor Innes.
Just that I think I look at it as voting at home or voting at the polling station, and both are important options to offer. If we can offer the electronic at the polling stations and there's some budget there to try and increase the voting rate through other ways, communication, the hours and the days, I think that's a good way to go.
Other comments? Councilor Parks?
Just for clarification, option 1 from what I'm seeing does not include paper ballots. I won't be supporting the motion.
Duly noted. I think Councilor Willis is with you. Any other comments?
I also
You have comment?
support the motion because I don't think we're ready to move away from the paper ballot yet.
Duly noted. Other comments? Then I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 2. The motion is carried. Motion to adjourn committee of the whole. Mayor, seconded by Councilor Innes. All those in favor? Motion is carried. We're adjourned at 8:09.
Okay, so we'll finish the rest of the meeting. Next item's up, notice for motion. Is there any notices of motion this evening? None direct motion. Any direct motions to be presented this evening? Seeing none, we have the consent agenda. Any item on it can be withdrawn, extracted at council's wish. So are there any items, Deputy Mayor?
I would just request that that resolution GC 2025-29 in item 15.2 be extracted. That's the one I declared a conflict on. It would allow me to vote on the rest.
Just extract the one?
Just to extract the one resolution.
So we'll. Works?
Thank you. Can I have one extracted too?
Yes.
Okay. It would be the GC 2025-37, which is part of the community grants.
So which item was yours?
Number 14, GC 2025-37.
15's extracted and yours was 9? No, 29. Number 4 on the list. Okay. Okay, 2 items extracted. Councillor Willis.
Number 7, which is GC 2025-32.
7. Okay. Yes. So Parks.
This is more for clarification, so I'm not sure if I should extract it or not, but
If it's just for clarification, it can stay in if you wish.
sure,
If
we'll leave it at that. It's just for clarification because there's some, yeah, we'll just leave it as clarification.
Okay. Councillor Willis?
There's a couple of things to say about it.
So you want to extract 15.2 in its entirety? Which would leave 15.1 and 15.3. Okay, we'll do that. And then when we come back to 15.2, the individual items can be extracted as it was previously noted. So with that, would someone like to make a motion for 15.1 and 15.3? Councillor Pratt.
I would recommend that all items in the consent agenda from 15.1 and 15.3 dated July 8th, 2025 be approved as presented and that necessary action be taken.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Ennis. Any comments from the mover? Seconder? Other members? Call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. So we are down to 15.2. Excuse me. Just looking to the clerk. Did you have something to add for one of the items as well?
Yes, I did. It was relating to Resolution 2025-33 at number 9, number 10, number 11. If I may, Mr. Mayor,
For me?
can I continue?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
please.
So the original application from the Community Sharing Center asked for $10,000. But since the grant committee meeting, they have sent an email, which is attached to the agenda, asking for $10,000 to be used for purchasing food and food containers, plus another $5,752.24 in-kind services for the use of facilities. I just wanted to make sure that council understands that, and if it's council's intention, then I can make the changes to the recommendation.
Okay. So if that's the case, then when the motion is made, we'll just note that that one will be amended with the dollar value. Excuse me. Now, with the whole thing extracted, do we still want to extract the individual items? I'm just looking to council. If so, we can deal with them individually. The one, yours we will keep out simply because that way you can deal with everything except the one with the declaration. Since it's separated, since the whole thing was pulled, do you want to just deal with it together? Okay.
So rule for 4.15 in the community grant policy says that a group can only apply for a grant once per year. So the committee in looking at the grant applications is asking council to use their discretion on a few of them. So one is number 2, which is the township applying for $100,000 for the Fairfield House, the design of the project. But then there's a second grant application for 10K for the CEF, the Community Efficiency Financing. So the committee recommended approval of 2 for the township. They did not recommend approval of the community grant application to fix the cemeteries because they felt that should come from a different budget line. And then the other is Boys and Girls Club. So they're recommending approval of the $10,000 grant application for a STEM program, but Boys and Girls Club did already receive a grant in intake 1. So again, just calling out that council's discretion is being asked for in those ones.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And just to be clear, we're dealing with everything except number 4 then. We will deal with that individually. There was, yes. Councilor Parks, did you had one?
By staff.
It was answered by staff?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Are there any other questions for clarification on this? Being none, I would entertain a motion for all the items in 15.2 with the exception of number 4, GC 2025-29. Deputy Mayor, so moved. Seconded by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Parks, did you have?
I wanted to extract that one too.
You still wanted to
Yes,
extract it?
yeah.
Okay, which one was that you wanted?
Let's see, that is the 14, 2025-37, sorry.
Okay. So mover, are you in agreement that your motion will have 14 and number 4 extracted? Seconder, you're in agreement with that? Okay, thank you. So any final comments on that? Call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. So we will go to 14 and then we'll go back to 4. That way you only had, we're not waiting to come in.
Thank you. And I guess this is a question directed to staff in regards to the repairs of the cemetery monuments. I know the Community Grant Committee had suggested that funding should be coming from another stream. Is there another stream available? Are there funds available for maintaining those monuments? Because from what I read from the report, they're in critical need of repair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Parks's question, there are funds available in the 2025 operating budget for cemetery repairs. However, it would not be enough to repair all of the headstones that are in critical need of repair. So staff will work with companies or monument companies to lay some of them down to save on costs, and the ones that we could fix using the funds, we will try to fix this year. So
Do you have another question? Comment?
Can I ask what funds are available? The amount?
There was 49,000 budgeted in 2025, which was approved. But that includes the cost of the cemetery maintenance, like turf maintenance and tree trimming.
Thank you.
That's fine. I just have a question too. Okay. I have a question on this item for clarification as well. In the report or the comments I read about the perpetual fund, I know that recently the township has inherited abandoned cemeteries. And if I remember correctly, there was no real perpetual fund that came to the township with those. So I guess you may not have the answer right here in front of you because it's financial, but out of the perpetual funds we do have, are there actually sufficient funds to be able to maintain them? The headstones and the parks? And I'm just, in the past, the perpetual fund has been so small that it was basically inefficient. Sorry.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, did you have another question or would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Please proceed.
I would recommend that council approve Loyalist Township community grant application in the amount of $10,000 for the monuments and cemeteries.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Budrick. Comments from the mover?
No, I think it's something that, we need to do. It's unfortunate the township keeps getting these graveyards turned back to them, but it is something that is part of our historical significance in the communities.
Seconder, no further. Other members, Councillor Willis?
I can't support the motion because I believe that when we ask a committee to do the work for us and provide us with advice, we have to respect that. And there was a good amount of discussion about this item, and the committee felt that this should come from a different source than the community grants.
Okay, so noted. Other members of comment? Seeing none, back to the mover for final.
No.
Okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? I'll cast my vote in favor. And we'll go back to number 4. The deputy has declared. So number 4, does somebody wish to make a motion? Councillor Broderick.
I would recommend that the committee recommends that the council approve St. Paul's Presbyterian Church community grant application in the amount of $32,620.50.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Budrick. Comments from the mover?
Similar to what Councillor Willis just mentioned about supporting the committee's work.
Thank you. Seconder, other members? Call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Could one of you just let him know he come in? There he is. Okay. That brings us to announcements. Are there announcements to be made this evening from council? Councillor Parks.
I just wanted to congratulate staff and the volunteers from BAF Canada Day. It was a huge success. Thank you for the mayor for doing opening ceremonies and being there, and for the rest of council that was able to attend to be there. Again, another well-organized event by staff and the volunteers, and good work.
Thank you. Any other announcements this evening? I'd just like to reiterate that it was a great day, very well attended. And also on Amherst Island, there was the parade and the festivities in the evening. It was nice to be able to participate in both of them and celebrate throughout the community on Canada Day. One other one I was just going to mention is the township's new website went live today. Same information from what I can see. I've gone in, not in depth, but went in. My level of technical expertise, I went in far enough. And same information, different feel a little bit. but it's all been updated, and I would just like to thank the staff that worked on it. There were some leads that, of course, that pulled a lot of heavy weight on it, but every department was involved to make sure that their department's information was correct, up to date, and entered into the new website accordingly. So just kudos to staff for that, and I hope it serves the residents well. With that, confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Proctor.
I would move that the bylaw 2025-48 to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Loyalist Township be enacted and passed, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign and seal.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Parks. All in favor? Motion is passed. And a motion to adjourn. Do I have Deputy Mayor Town? So moved, seconded by Councillor Parks. All in favor? Motion is carried. We are adjourned at 8:20.